Hello and welcome to our next episode of CatSci Podcast. Today we're joined by Julie Posluns, an Associate Certified Applied Animal Behaviorist who runs Cat School. Cat School is an online training school just for cats. Cat School's mission is to show cat lovers that training is a fun, easy, and rewarding experience for both cats and humans. Thousands of cat guardians have learned training methods from Cat School, and they've proven that cats are not only trainable, but love the activity and enrichment that training provides. Cat School tutorials all feature Julie's star student, a sassy black cat named Jones. Join us in this episode as we learn more about Julie and the amazing work being done at Cat School.
Hi, Julie. It is nice to have you on here. I always love working with you. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be able to chat with both of you as well. So I'm Julie and I run Cat School. Cat School is a training school, an online training school where we teach people fun and practical skills to teach their cat using clicker training.
Great. Well, so have you had cats your whole life, and how many cats do you currently have?
So I have grown up with cats. I had 2 cats growing up. Right now I have one very energetic cat named Jones. He's very dog-like. So I have 1 dog and 1 energetic cat. So sometimes it feels like I have 2 dogs.
And how did you get Jones? Was he a stray that showed up, or did you adopt him?
It was funny. I was on the phone and I heard this meow outside my house. And I've always I've always paid attention to the sounds of animals, whether it's like raccoons or just hearing, I'm very sensitive to that. And so of course I just went outside to see what was going on. And sure enough, there was a kitten just next door at my neighbor's house. And he right away ran under the porch. So I called my husband over. I phoned him to come outside and come help me. And we were able to get him. But we didn't plan on keeping him because we had 2 dogs at the time that hated cats. We actually had our house separated so that our cat at the time lived upstairs, and that's where we put Jones, but he didn't want to stay up there. So it was a bit messy and we weren't planning on keeping him. But somehow Jones managed to convince the dogs that he was going to be their friend. It was weird. I didn't really know at the time what I was doing, but our house was set up really well that Jones would kind of walk down the stairs. The dogs would lunge and bark at him and he'd run up the stairs, and he did it over and over and over again until eventually the dogs were like, "Oh, you again," and didn't bother to get up. And then he would just he felt safe coming down even further. And the next thing I knew, they were all hanging out together. And I was like, I guess we're keeping him. So yeah, he's just a really special guy. He loves other animals and he loves dogs, and he just watches them and learns their body language and everything. He's just really funny little guy.
Can I hire him to be a BMOD instructor?
Learned how to watch their social skills. He knows when they're going to chase him, and he runs, he's just so funny. It's amazing to see. I love dog cat interactions. I just think they're fascinating. When you think about two different species that learn how to communicate with each other, it's just incredible. So I get to watch, I get to see him interact with dogs, and it's just a lot of fun.
So is that really your first exposure to cats, Jones, or had you had cats growing up at all?
We had a cat. At the time that I got Jones, we actually had a cat. Her name was Mackenzie, and she was the most easygoing cat. Like I said, I had separated my house and she lived upstairs and the dogs were downstairs. So they never interacted. And Mackenzie was, seemed totally fine upstairs. She didn't really ask for too much. She was just very relaxed. it was kind of like a joke in our house that I would take care of the intense dogs and Mackenzie was like my husband's cat. And so, he was like, I'll take care of Mackenzie and you do. And then Jones came along and just kind of stirred it all up. But yeah, Mackenzie was just an easy cat and just a completely different personality from Jones.
And kind of on the topic of Jones interacting well with other dogs, he also greets cats. And does he greet just cats or does he greet dogs on the street as well when he goes for walks?
He's good with both dogs and cats. He's really good about navigating those kinds of interactions. It depends on the dog, but especially if he gets to know them. So he has a bunch of dog friends in the neighborhood and he will like interact with them. It doesn't seem to be too specific. Like he likes dogs and he likes cats. He just likes being with other animals. He's fearful of people. So that's the interesting thing. He's got these really good skills at interacting with other animals, but when it comes to people, he's way more fearful and he'll often move away from strangers and stuff.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
So my cat Elliot is the exact opposite of Jones. He's fearful of especially dogs. He can navigate situations with cats where at first he's very puffy and then he'll kind of ease into it and he can be okay. And dogs too, but I mean, not strange. I don't see stranger dogs that often, but he will flop himself in front of any person. He is quite a ham in that sense. It's just funny how they have their different personalities.
Yeah, totally. It is funny.
Oh, good girl. Yeah,
well, I used to walk just some dogs and they were very fearful of people, but they had really good social skills with other dogs. And then the opposite is true. Like there are dogs that just love people, but you put them with another dog and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with you. So I think sometimes that happens. They kind of get the one set of skills and, certainly in Jones's case, he's all about animals. Like he'll just spend hours, he'll sit right down next to the dog and just stare at her. We actually used to call him the therapy cat for one of our dogs because as he went into his senior years, he would pace a lot and Jones would often just go downstairs and just kind of hang out with him and rub against him and stuff as our dog was pacing. And so it was very sweet, but we call him the therapy cat for the dogs.
Aww.
So going off that, I'm curious, what are some common greeting behaviors you see from Jones, like going up to other cats or other dogs?
Well, mostly he'll just observe at a distance at first. So like if he doesn't know them, he'll sit and I always kind of look and see, is he trying to run away? But most of the time for Jones, he will sit. And if the dog approaches him, then he'll he'll do like a nose to nose sniffing with him. And if the dog is polite, that often goes well. And, the dog will turn away and Jones will probably sniff his tail even. It's very similar to the dog interactions because they have like a short nose to nose greeting and then they kind of move around and investigate each other's different parts of their body. And then like we just had this interaction with one dog named Peanut and Peanut kind of walked away and Jones was just sitting there watching him and then they kind of met again. And so, yeah, just that kind of thing. With cats, he does, he'll sit again and he'll stare. He loves to just sit and observe. He's a big observer. So it can be a bit annoying when I'm walking him because he will just want to sit and plop himself there. And, we're not going very far. Especially like if he finds a friend, it's game over. Like he's spending the whole day observing this other cat and I am standing there. But yeah, he does a lot of just staring at the other cat. But as they become friends, then you get to see, his happy tail. And he will do like a nose to nose sniff or sniff the other cat's bum or tail area and stuff. So he's a very polite little greeter.
Yeah. He sounds to have, it seems like he has some really nice greeting skills. I mean, even much better than, the dogs that I work with too.
Yeah, he does. And I didn't teach him any of it, I have to say. He just was born that way. Like people are always like, well, how did you get your cat to be good with, other animals? And really there's no I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't have any part to it, but for the most part, it is his personality. Like I have helped him see that it's a positive experience, I think, but just being relaxed and not necessarily getting nervous or anything, but that's only because I know he's going to be fine with them. So they kind of work together.
So what kind of things did you do with him? Did you take him outside at a young age or, drive him around in the car, stuff like that?
So I actually didn't do as much as I would have liked to do because I didn't think I was keeping him. So I wasn't really, and also he wasn't that young. Like he wasn't, I can't remember. I didn't know his age exactly, but I feel like he was about 4 months. So he's probably about 16 weeks. He was either between 12 to 16 weeks, but I think he was a little bit older. And I didn't think I was going to keep him. So I wasn't, and I wasn't a cat trainer at the time either. So I wasn't thinking, oh, this is my checklist of things to do with him. So I got him around September, October, but I actually didn't take him outside until, I guess it was like April. So he was probably around 6 or 7 and 8 months even at that time. And then I just, kind of started researching like what, people taking their cats outside safely. And, I was a beginner at the time, so I didn't really know what I was doing with him. So I didn't take him in the car. I didn't do anything with him. I got a harness, put it on him, and that wasn't too hard, but he did slip out. So kind of had those early experiences where he slipped out 2 times. Luckily, he just ran home. He was scared and he slipped out and ran home. So those were my very early experiences with him. I wasn't, I was just like every other cat owner that wanted to take their cat outside. I didn't know it was different than, if I would have gotten a puppy, I would have had my checklist. So do this and do that. I would have loved to have taken him in the car. I would have loved to have started to brush his teeth. Like if I do it all over, I would do so many things differently. But yeah, I didn't really do very much at all, actually. But once we got outside, then I started to use my dog brain at some point and say, okay, you know what? This is the same, and I can do this stuff with him too. So that was part of it. But yeah, in the beginning, I really didn't know what I was doing.
Fair enough. There's really not many of us out there, and we all come to this at all different times and speeds and everything. But despite maybe, hindsight's always 20/20. So despite maybe going back and saying you wish you could have done more, I mean, he is a phenomenal cat.
So I'm interested to hear more about Jones. Just how many tricks does Jones know?
I like to say he knows about 100 tricks, but I've never actually counted them all. But sometimes I do in my head. I started off with like all the jumping tricks he knows, and then all the practical skills he knows, and all the other stuff. And I just start adding them up. And I know if I really wanted to, I bet you we could do 100. I'd have to like really write them down. But he knows a lot of tricks. Like, and he learns them so fast at this point because he's just like, oh, I know what you want. I know what you want. And he's just intuitive like that way now.
Absolutely. I find that our cats kind of become master guessers. They're like, oh, you move your head in this way, you move your arm in this way. This means that, we're going to do this right now. Put my paw here. Even, with Peach, I'll just be sitting here, and let's say that I have a water bottle in front of me and I'm working with a clicker and I have treats, Peach will just start touching it. Mm-hmm. Touching the water bottle. Touch the side. Look at me. Is that what you want? Touch the top. Look at me. Is that what you want? Touch the other side. So they become, like you said, intuitive in trying to figure out how to make it work, how to make the human tick to feed them.
Yeah. No, I just started working on, like, I don't know if you've seen the shoulder cat stuff with the cats jumping on shoulders. So I was like, oh, I got to do this. This looks so much fun. So I've been working with the backpack and my shoulder. So he steps on the backpack and then puts 2 paws on my shoulder. I look really silly. My husband's embarrassed of me, but anyway, because I do this outside, like right on my porch. But anyway, I do it for the bigger mission of spreading the message. So it's all good. But now the other day, he's like trying to fly onto my back and everything. And like, it was so funny because he just gets so confident at it. He's, I just do one thing with him and he's like, oh, this is what you want. And he's like, I have to watch out, and start like making sure I add a proper signal to it so he understands when he should do it. But the confidence is just so funny. He learns it, he gets confident in it, and then he's like, okay, game on, let's do this.
Well, if you embarrass your spouse, that means you're doing something right in the world of cat training.
I'll let him know. Because I'm like, isn't shoulder cat so cool? He's like, no, it's not. It's not cool.
So how did you get from not really any cat training experience to where you are now with, him knowing hundreds of tricks and running cat school?
As I was kind of like getting used to having this energetic cat, and he was teaching me stuff, he was the one that really said, like, I want to do whatever the dogs do. That was kind of the theme. And that kind of got my brain thinking, well, why am I doing stuff with my dogs but not him? So once I made that connection, it was just, this is how we're moving forward. And then I just started to see, well, what can I teach my dog? What can I teach him? Like, can I teach them the same stuff? Will he learn everything that they can learn? So I just started to kind of go through what I had taught them. And so I've been doing clicker training with my dogs for a long time. Like I said, they're 17 now, the one that passed away was 17, so I started clicker training him a long time ago. And I always kept going with clicker training because it was a good way to tire him out in the house. He's always been a challenging dog. And so I use that as a way at night and like living downtown Toronto, sometimes it's hard to get outside. We also don't have the best weather. So it was kind of like a way that I could tire my dogs out. So I was busy training my dogs. And then there was Jones, and he's looking and he wanted to be involved and he wanted their treats. So he was just like right there wanting to do their stuff. So I can't remember what I was working on at the time with my dogs, but I remember trying to teach him to fist bump. And it was just not a problem. Like, he got it right away. And so I just started doing the training with him. But it was actually what really got me even more interested in training cats was that when I started training him, our other cat, Mackenzie, who I had done nothing with, like, I actually feel really badly about this because I didn't realize that Mackenzie actually wanted to do something. All of a sudden, Mackenzie was there. And so I would start training them both upstairs. And it was actually Mackenzie that was even more interested, I think, because she just didn't really have that much to do. And so Jones would sit and watch Mackenzie learn. And so I started to train Mackenzie a lot. She loved it. And I had never had an activity to do with her. And so it was just funny, like, I started to train both of them. And it was kind of the same thing that I had done with my dogs. Is when I kind of discovered clicker training, thought, what are all the behaviors I can teach them? So I just went through the exact same thing with the cats. I was like, well, what should I teach them? What are all the behaviors they can learn? And that's kind of how I started to build our trick repertoire. And if you scroll back on my Instagram to like early days, I actually had a dog training account for my dog tricks. And then I started doing the cats. Like, I posted maybe one trick and people were like, wow, that's really cool. Like, I had no idea. And then I just kept going with the cat tricks and eventually became more cat and less dog.
I love what you kind of mentioned there about, what we think about the cat kind of impacts what their behavior is going to be. Because in some of my work, a lot of times people will just say, well, cats are this way, but I don't think people think about how their behavior impacts that cat. And
Yes.
we've seen that if a person ignores a cat, the cat is less likely to interact with you. But if you pay attention to the cat, they're more likely to interact with you. So if you kind of have this expectation that, Tori always puts it like the cat's just a piece of furniture in the house, like they don't really want to interact. Well, if you don't go out of your way to interact with them, they're not going to go out of their way to interact with you, most likely. So I really like that, you mentioned that you just hadn't thought about training your cat, because I think that's true for a lot of people. We just don't think that that's even a possibility. So I think one great thing about cat school is just people being able to see, hey, cats can do all of these things and they can do it just as well as dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's so true. You really, it's, in a way, it can be, I mean, I don't know if this would be for the average person, but I think for sure in my life, it can be a little bit dangerous because the cat knows that they can get so much out of me, so much attention, and they become a little bit of a, like, when my husband says I could turn them into monsters because they want to interact so much. So it's almost the opposite side of the coin, is like, they know I will do, as soon as I see that spark, I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. And then the cat's like, okay, let's do it. And then we're just busy training even too much. So it's true. You have that interaction back and forth. And certainly in my world, they love, I've never had a pet that hasn't loved doing stuff with me once I initiated it. Like I said, with Mackenzie, I never knew. But as soon as I was like, let's do this together, they all show up. Like I'll have what I call a big classroom of students. I have to fight to keep, when I work with Jones, I have to fight to keep the dogs back. Like I have to figure out strategies because they all want to participate. It's fun. There's treats involved. There's attention. Like it makes sense why they all want to be participating.
I think that's a really good point that you make, that it's like a classroom full. So kind of in my life right now, I've got the new puppy and I have the 3 cats and my older dog, Nikki. And so it literally does feel like a classroom sometimes.
Yeah.
I will start training the puppy because she has to learn a bunch of things. In fact, the listeners may hear her playing with a cat toy in the background right now. And if I'm working with her, the cats, even though they're not fully comfortable with the puppy yet, they will bite the bullet and come and kind of wince and come forward and say, we want to be trained too, even though we might get mouthed on or chased a little bit. And they're like, and I'm like, you guys, I will do it with you. Just hang on a second. Don't put yourselves in these positions, but they can't help themselves.
It's so true. And like in our house, the funny thing was, after I started training the cats, Mackenzie started to come downstairs too. So like everything changed. It's really sad because she didn't live that long after. So like, it's just, one of those things where I kind of got to know her, but very late in her life. And I saw all these amazing benefits, but we didn't have that much time together. So, but she started to come downstairs. She got so much braver with the dogs. Part of that was probably seeing Jones interact with the dogs too, but she wanted to come downstairs and interact with us also. So it was just like everything changed when I started to introduce training to them.
Yeah, I had a similar experience where I had never thought about cat training before I came to Oregon State and worked with my mentor, Dr. Monique Udell. And she was really the first one who suggested, hey, what about offering kitten training and socialization classes? And kind of struck me like, oh, you could do that. So the first cat I started training was my cat, Cecilia, who was 7 years old at the time. And it was just like eye-opening. She, that she could learn all this stuff and learn it rather quickly. But we only had about 1.5 years together before she passed away pretty suddenly. So it was kind of just like a lot of regret too. Like, oh, I wish I'd started this earlier. But I think that's also helped now with, we found some new kittens and starting a little earlier with them and trying to give them the experience that I couldn't, give her. So.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think as a trainer, and I bet you Tori's feeling this right now, is like, you just want to do so much with them early on. And I wouldn't even put the pressure of getting like a puppy on myself, because I know how much like I would want to do. And, same with a kitten. With a kitten, I would be so curious how, if I raise them like a dog, and I know some people don't love that whole concept, but like if I did everything that I would do with my kitten that I would do with a puppy, what would they turn out to be? I would be so curious, how confident they would be, or maybe it wouldn't work. But I've never had that opportunity where I took a kitten outside, put them in a car, introduced them to lots of people, started walks at a very young age. Like, yeah, it's a different world. It's a different world of raising them that way. And I would be curious, but that's not going to happen right now with a puppy or kitten. So the good news is, regardless of how much we do, doing anything is better than doing nothing. Like if you get that harness on early on, that's great. If you brush teeth early on, that's great. But it doesn't have to be a race. It's just, I think when you're a trainer, you just start putting that pressure on yourself because you really want to see what you can do. And they have such a short window. Cats especially have a really short window of socialization and stuff.
So I guess this kind of brings me to another question. If you've had experience both with dogs and cats, and you've kind of hit on some of those differences, but as far as like actual training goes, are there any differences or similarities you note between training dogs and cats?
Well, there are tons of similarities because we use the same methods, and I think they learn really fast. Cats, like compared to dogs, like I honestly don't see much of a difference. I would say I do, just from my own experience, I do shorter sessions than I would do with dogs. I don't know if that might have something to do with just always being worried of feeding the cat too much. So just based on their size, I try not to, I don't want to do too much food. Even if I'm working with the cat's food, I might feed a tablespoon of wet food as a reward. That doesn't go very far. Whereas with dogs, you can break up, hundreds of treats or hundreds of pieces of kibble. So I do shorter sessions with cats. And the thing that does stand out as well is just the different tricks that I like to do. Like, for example, right now we're doing tricks on a chair, and I wouldn't do that with a dog. So jumping on my shoulder, any of those tricks. And so those are the big things that I kind of love, like the agility. Like maybe some people set up agility in their house for dogs, but I don't. But for the cat, it's a lot easier. I have like a little jump. And so the size and the agility kind of dictate a lot of the different things that I work on. But the learning perspective is like exactly the same style and the same method, and all that is just, I think, training cats, you have to become a little bit of a better trainer because, those 5 treats have to go a little further, and you can't be as messy because they will walk away from training faster if you're making, if you're, like I always say, if they get it wrong, try to figure it out so the next time they get it right. Because a cat does not want to lose. They're going to walk away from the training. Whereas the dog will probably follow you and still try to figure it out. The cat might give up a little bit. But again, these are just generalizations that they're not necessarily true. Like I think, you work with certain animals and they're going to be, some are going to be more trainable than others, and some cats are going to be very motivated and some will be less motivated. So you are always going to have the range, and the same is true for dogs. So I don't see that many differences, but I do like to focus on the different tricks because it's fun for me to try to teach stuff that involve more agility and stuff.
Is your passion to teach tricks the reason why you focus on tricks with cat school, or what prompted the emphasis on doing the fun stuff?
Tricks have always been a big part of training for me, and it was kind of just where I started, and I've always fallen in love with them. Like with my dogs, with my dog who had challenging aggression, I had to find ways to keep him busy inside. And tricks just kind of gave me that freedom. I had so many things I could work on. I just remember seeing someone do a dog trick routine with their dog. It was like 3 minutes long, and I was committed to teaching my dog every single one of those tricks. And so the tricks was just a way that we could have fun together and forget that he had all those issues, and I could, give him a lot of enrichment, and he would sleep after. Like, I would only train him for 10 to 15 minutes, and I would have so much more peace. And so it was just like a lot was going on at the time, living in Toronto, downtown with an aggressive dog. Like, it was just hard. Like, it was hard. And then I had this fun thing that I could connect with my dog. So that was kind of where I got into tricks. And then, so like, it just became part of our routine. Like I had mentioned about, I was doing it for a long time. When Jones came along, I had been training my dog's tricks at night all the time anyway. So it was just a natural extension. And I just love the way there's so many tricks. So you never have to really think too hard about what you're working on. Whereas, and they're fun. So, you could be working on something like going in the car, but that's not a fun task versus teaching your cat something fun, like, giving paw or doing a sit pretty or a wave or anything, or sit pretty, standing up on two paws, I should say. But like any of those tricks, balance tricks, they're just projects that are fun and you don't have to take it too seriously. So it's just, I like everything about tricks. There's nothing I don't like about tricks. There's so many. They're a lot of fun, and that you can literally be kept busy with them forever and ever. So as a person who knew that training was going to be a part of my dog's life, it just became ingrained in me that I would be teaching tricks. It would be the one way I knew I could keep him like happy and burn his energy and keep him out of trouble. So I hope I can always like get people involved in tricks, because I think that's the best way to get them to stay committed. So I can show new tricks, get them involved, and even a monthly trick, and then know that people are always having something. I want them, when they think about training their cat, I want them to already kind of know what they're working on, so they don't have to, the extra effort of like, well, what should we teach today? I don't want anyone to have to worry about that. They're like, okay, this is a trick I want to teach. It's a super cute one, and it'll keep me kind of like having a puzzle out. Like, I grew up with puzzles, and we would always come home and like spend time working a little bit on a puzzle, putting a few pieces together. That's like a trick to me. You know what you're working on, and every day you just kind of put a few more little bits of the pieces together, and then at the end it's almost sad when the puzzle's finished, because you're like, what now? But that's how I feel about a trick. A trick is finished, you're like, okay, what now? I need a new one. So yeah, that's a lot of rambling on about tricks, but I connect with them.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the idea. Even with my work, I use tricks to help solve problem behaviors, because as we know, a lot of it can be based on boredom, frustration, and stress. And so by giving them something to do really helps. I think a lot of people will connect with what you're saying about tricks, because I think that's one of my favorite parts about training in general, is seeing things come together, seeing that puzzle, become closer to being finished and then finished. And the reward of knowing that you put that work in, you created that bond, and now here it is.
Yeah, I love that too. You're working on rollover, there's all these different steps, and then in the end, your cat rolls over. It's like exciting and fun and very fulfilling.
I'm curious about how science informs your work with cats, and are you working on your master's currently, or do you have your master's?
So I have my master's, and I am, so that's all done. Thankfully.
Congratulations. Yeah. So how has your master's as well kind of informed some of your work?
So my master's was on the interactions of unfamiliar dogs. So that's a big part of like my interest, is the interactions of unfamiliar animals. So I really like looking at how cats interact and how those interactions change with familiarity. So I think if you want to like get to know cat behavior, seeing unfamiliar cats interact is like, there's like so much going on in those kinds of contexts. And so it offers just a wealth of opportunity to like learn about cats. So I love like when I take my cat for walks, when we see other cats, that's an opportunity for me to be like a good observer at a safe distance. We always take the opportunity to like notice cats, and you know, if I feel like the interaction will be safe, eventually get them closer together. But so that's kind of where I use my research and stuff, which is just like looking at how those interactions are the same or different from what I've learned from observing dog interactions. And I don't really do that much for cat school. I know people have questions about it, and I hope to offer more stuff. Mostly that's just a hobby of mine, and I will post, you know, kind of what I see. I call it cat social TV and stuff. So I post like Jones meeting other cats and how they became friends, like how their friendship evolves, and like what does it look like if they don't see each other for 3 months and then they do, stuff like that, which is really interesting because we might wonder, you know, what's their familiarity like if they don't see each other for a year? Will they remember? So I'll post things like that. So, but that's more of just, you know, fun and stuff. Where I think there is a good gap is using the clicker to help interactions with cats. So I try to show a little bit of that when I have the opportunity. Whereas like when we're first meeting, we had a interaction with a cat that was scared of us. And so I use the clicker as a way to help get those cats together and to help him overcome his fear of me. And that was a really fun project because I really love I don't think there's a lot of information about using clicker with cat-cat interactions. So I think there's a good opportunity to like share, you know, it as a really valuable tool to help navigate cat-cat interactions. Clicker training is just something that should be more widely, like it should be more known because it's a very effective tool for helping cats get along.
I love that idea of using a clicker with cat interactions. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's something I do hope to show more of one day. I do have a lot of video and I just haven't actually put anything together, but anyone who edits video like you do probably knows how time consuming it is.
100%.
Yep.
So, Julie, is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners?
I hope that people will be inspired to try clicker training their cats and to see what it's all about and to pick a few fun tricks to work on and see if their cat enjoys it. And then obviously the end goal is to make it part of their enrichment routine.
And can you also tell us where we can find you on social media?
So our YouTube channel is just Cat School. So youtube.com/cat school. And then Instagram is at cat.school. So those are the two channels where we spend a lot of time. YouTube tutorials are available to learn how to clicker train your cat. And then I like to feature students on our Instagram account showing off their training. Thank you both for having me. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really great just hearing more about, you know, your experience in cat school in general. And people are starting to see more what cats can do. And I think programs like yours are just further supporting this idea that cats are really amazing creatures. They're very agile, they're very smart, and if you just take the time to work with them, they can do amazing things. So thanks for doing that.
Absolutely, and thank you guys too for spreading the message.
This episode was brought to you by Mauai's Cat Behavior and Space Cat Academy. Visit us online at mauais.com and spacecatacademy.com.